Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see a lot of familiar faces. It's been not so long since we've all been gathered to, I suppose, celebrate. And today is special because we're promoting National Stuttering Awareness Day, and delighted to have Jamie and the crew here with us to launch it officially. I might first of all call on Cian O'Neill, who's the Head of Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies here at MTU, to give an official welcome to all of you. Cian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mayor of Cork County, Councillor Danny Collins, Deputy Lord Mayor of the City, Councillor Damien Boylan, Councillor Canty, who we see a lot of each other at the Cork Sports Partnership, Board of Directors, President Cusack, and invited guests. You're all very, very welcome here today to MTU. The weather doesn't quite match the occasion, unfortunately, but I do think the sentiment and the reason behind why we're all here today trumps any type of weather we could suffer this winter. It's an incredible honour of mine not just to welcome Jamie and the rest of the team from Stuttering Awareness and Mental Wellbeing Ireland to this event, but my man crush happens to be Mr. Brian O'Donovan from RTE. So, Jamie, I'm not on my own, and I know I'm not on my own in saying this.
Don't even know, Brian.
What a coup in getting Brian here today to share this momentous occasion. And I know it's not just about today. Brian, thank you so much. Over the last number of months, you have really been a strong source of support for Jamie. I've often found it interesting, I said to my wife at home, who equally loves Brian, that if your T News was on at the same time as Coronation Street and EastEnders, I do think that the national ratings for Coronation Street and EastEnders would drop, just so people could tune in to listen to Brian. On a personal level, I've learned a lot from you in terms of your role, your delivery, your communication, and getting a clear message across. So thank you for being here today. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule. On behalf of the Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies, on a selfish level, Jamie is a graduate of ours, having come to what was CIT initially in 2011, graduating in 2015. If I'm not mistaken, 7 years to the day today, Jamie, which is quite incredible, with a Bachelor of Business Honours in Sport and Exercise. So that's quite a nice little touch to add. But you're not on your own, and you have a fantastic team with you, with Con Hurley, who's here with us today, Con, and we have Norman Coleman, who's here with us as well. Norman, very welcome as always. And of course, Michael O'Shea and Michael Ryan, who spent so many important days with us here for previous events related to this launch. And I believe they're all over the country and in the UK, and Good Morning Britain this morning, advocating for this whole Stuttering Awareness and Mental Wellbeing event. So it just demonstrates the reach and the impact. So in research terms, of which I'm heavily involved in, we think about reach, we think about impact. It's incredible in such a short period of time what you, Jamie, and the rest of the team have achieved. However, today, October 21st, marks the official launch of Ireland's National Stuttering Awareness Day 2022, and of course, the release of the beautiful recital of Seamus Heaney's evocative literary masterpiece, The Cure of Troy, for President Biden in the first instance, but not just for President Biden. I also feel that it's for all of those who've struggled with the challenges and the impact that stuttering can have on their day-to-day lives. Of course, October 22nd is tomorrow and is World Stuttering Awareness Day, so it wouldn't be like Jamie and the team to always try and steal a march and get in there 24 hours early, or maybe just because it's a Saturday, but it's incredible. I think Gerard's mentioned already, very interestingly, this isn't the first day we found ourselves in this room, or indeed on this campus. This for me is just one further step in the incredible journey that Jamie and the rest of the team have been on in terms of trying to advocate for and endorse greater and further support for not just stuttering, but also mental well-being, which is one of the core focuses of my own research career. We have been here before for many different reasons. We had the initial launch, if not mistaken. We also had the signing of the letter to President Biden. And then in more recent times, we actually had the group recital of The Cure of Troy. So it is indeed part of a process driven all the time by Jamie, Michael, Con, and Norman. And I think it's a credit to you all for having us here today. And I think that merits a round of applause. Here in MTU, our mission is to lead change and, through education, to empower people for a successful future in a globalised world. As a graduate of our programme here, Jamie, and as a continued ambassador and role model in the alumnus role that you hold, without question, you have led change and you have educated not just everybody in this room, but every single person who's engaged with the Stuttering Awareness and Mental Wellbeing campaign. And to that, we are eternally grateful, as are all the voices that we are not hearing today, who've learned so much from you and the rest of the team. Further, and interestingly, the core values of MTU, and this is taken from our strategy launch, President, which is not too long ago released on a much larger scale. Our core values relate to being inclusive, being engaging, and being bold. And I think it's interesting, the correlation that we can look at in terms of what the mission statement of MTU is and what our core values that we really hold dear and how that relates to the work that Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing actually strives to achieve. Without question, who we are, what we do, and what we aspire to be as agents of change in civic society correlates so closely with what you do, Jamie, and what the rest of the team do. But we as educators and as agents of change in a different way have our own responsibility to make sure we are spreading your good word and trying to spread your achievements and celebrate your achievements, to make sure that all of your voices in Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland are heard on a much greater scale. So congratulations to you, congratulations to Con, congratulations to Norman, the two Michaels, as I've got used to calling them, who could not be with us here today. You have been a fantastic ambassador as a group of citizens for this country and for everybody, not just who is struggling and trying to triumph over the adversity of stuttering, but their families, their parents, their siblings, their loved ones, who are also very often in the same position. Thank you, congratulations, and best wishes for President Biden's visit. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Cian. Now I'd like to call on the President of MTU, Professor Maggie Cusack, to address you.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks, Cian. Good afternoon, everyone. As President of MTU, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all here this afternoon to launch Ireland's National Stuttering Awareness Day 2022. I'd like to say welcome to our Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Boylan, Councillor Collins, our County Mayor, Councillor Canty, all of the co-founders of Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing, all of our colleagues here and guests. You're all very welcome to MTU this afternoon. I think it's really hard to believe that it's over a year, and it is over a year, Jamie. Time really flies since we launched the Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing campaign. I think time goes really quickly. But in reflecting on that year, I think we'd all have to agree that the campaign has gone from strength to strength. It's just been incredible what you've been able to achieve in that timeline. And I think that the Cure of Troy, the video message, really is a fantastic output and an amazing culmination of hard work and creativity by Jamie and Michael. And when you listen to it, I have to say it lands right in your heart. And I think people need a bit of a warning and a bit of time to really stop and think about it. It's incredibly powerful. So well done on that. Jamie, just in case you don't know, I would like to take this opportunity to say that at MTU, we are incredibly proud of you. We're incredibly proud to have you as an alumnus of MTU. In case that's not clear, I want to make that absolutely explicit. Jamie, you're often taking the opportunities to thank the university and, thank the university for offering support to the campaign. I'd like to turn that one back on you and say, actually, we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be involved in the campaign. So thank you, Jamie. We're incredibly proud. I think that you and the whole team are absolutely fantastic role models, genuinely just brilliant role models with an incredibly positive impact in helping others, and that's something that you should be incredibly proud of, all of you in the team. If I may, I would like to say thank you to our staff here at MTU who supported Jamie through his studies when he was a student with us, and now as he continues as one of our alumni, really working with the Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing to really help more than 50,000 people in Ireland. It's an incredible number, isn't it? Helping those people who stammer, helping their family and their loved ones. So if I could highlight Cian, thank you, Cian, for all the support you have given and continue to give Jamie. Also to call out Ger O'Donovan there. And Cian, if we could just report back our thanks to everyone in the Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies. It's very much appreciated. I'd also like to call out our colleagues, our staff in MTU Access Office who really supported Jamie as an undergraduate and now ongoing as an MTU alumnus. So well done and thank you. Jamie, I think through your positivity and your determination, and determination has to be, I think, one of your defining features. I think you're incredibly determined, and when you set your mind to achieve something, you're absolutely committed, all of your energy to really deliver on that. So it's through that positivity and determination, just think you've managed to send a message to the most influential and powerful office in the world. Just think about that. It's purely through your drive and your determination that you've achieved that. Absolutely amazing. And can I say, you've done it all with a really friendly and respectful attitude, and it's always an absolute delight to work with you. So well done. I think it's absolutely no wonder that you've been asked to represent Ireland on the board of directors of the World Stuttering Network, becoming not just the first Irish person to join the board, but the first European. And if that doesn't deserve a round of applause, you're a really tough audience. So MTU, we are really proud to be a safe space for everyone to be the most genuine and best version of themselves. So Cian mentioned the launch of our strategy earlier this month. And, you know, our commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion is embedded in that strategy that we launched. So this is the first one for a university. It sets out there in the public, here's our ambitions, here are our goals, this is what we're going to achieve over the next 5 years. The strategy is called Our Shared Vision, and EDI is central to everything that we want to achieve. We want to be able to celebrate diversity and to create a culture of acceptance, one of tolerance, and one of respect. And I think achieving that type of culture and environment is a rich one for everyone to work and to study. So as part of that commitment, we'll continue to support any students with stuttering and support any initiatives like this to really raise awareness of mental health and mental well-being. President Biden has spoken movingly about his own struggles to overcome stuttering, and we are truly grateful for his support and the support from his administration really for this campaign. President Biden has been, I think, an incredible advocate for the cause and is a great spokesperson for those who feel held back in any way by their stutter. So today, this really important day in Ireland, National Stuttering Awareness Day, and tomorrow, World Stuttering Awareness Day, I think both days really give anyone who's living with stutter hope and a sense of pride. And I think that very well-deserved sense of pride. So 2 really important days. And as I say, thank you for giving us the opportunity to support and be involved. It's an honour, it's a genuine honour to be part of such a campaign that's making positive impact, not just here at home, but at an international level. So on behalf of the entire MTU community, I want to wish Jamie, all of your co-founders, the whole team, the very best with the campaign. Wish you every success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Now I think we have a video that Taoiseach couldn't be here, but I think there's a video that he's recorded, so we might play that now.
So I very much welcome this initiative, which is hosted by Stuttering Awareness Mental Wellbeing Ireland in conjunction with the World Stuttering Network. This invaluable initiative complements the existing support services for children and adults who stutter, their families, teachers and employers. In Ireland, these supports include speech and language therapy services, regional self-help groups, support groups for parents, drama groups for children, education support services and employment support services such as interview training. Today provides not only an opportunity to raise awareness about stuttering, but also an opportunity to dispel some of the myths associated with stuttering. While we've come a long way from the days when stuttering implied the person was either shy or lacked confidence, we as individuals and as a society should always be looking for more and new ways to bring down the barriers to full participation in our communities, so people who stutter can express themselves freely and confidently. Each and every one of us can help with this by ensuring we become more knowledgeable about stuttering, by being patient listeners, by not judging stuttering negatively, and by not being fearful when communicating with people who stutter. Openness, patience, and willingness to celebrate and support our differences are key in supporting people who stutter to thrive in our society. It is time that we let people who stutter, and particularly children who stutter, know that they have nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of, and that we will simply give them time and wait patiently for them to fully express themselves. They have many great examples throughout history to be inspired by, from Winston Churchill to President Joe Biden. President Biden is current proof that those who stutter can excel and achieve the highest levels in any sector. I remember hearing a brilliant and insightful interview on our national radio with an stuttering network. Every success will follow.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Our next speaker is Brian O'Donovan, RT correspondent. I could claim that we're related, but we're not. But I did find out at lunch that we both have ancestors in West Cork, so we probably are. So delighted to welcome Brian O'Donovan.
Thank you. Very great to be introduced by a fellow O'Donovan, and thanks very much for having me here today, guys. It's great to be in MTU. I did confess, I'm still a little bit used to calling it CIT, but to be fair, the name change did happen while I was away, so that's my, and as the president reminded me, of course, it used to be RTC in the 1980s, I guess, so we're going back a bit there. But it is great to be here, and it's really special for me to be here, because I am from Farran, which is only a few miles that way. I went to school in Ballincollig, which is only even closer, a few miles that way, and I know this area very well. And my first job in broadcasting was in Red FM, which is in Curraheen, which is just there. So it's lovely to be back in this area, and I knew this area very well, obviously, growing up, and it's great to be here. Red FM is where I got my start. I was in college in DCU in Dublin, and my first part-time job while in college was in Red FM, which launched 20 years ago, and it was the weekends. They were looking for DJs and they were looking for newsreaders, and there was an advertisement for both, and I applied for both, and I didn't get the DJ job, but I did get the newsreader job, and that began my career path in journalism. And after a few years in Red FM, I moved on to TV3, where I worked for 10 years, then on to RTE. First on RTE, I worked on the foreign desk, and then in end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I got the job of Washington correspondent. And that's where I, towards the end of my time in Washington, got to meet Jamie Coogan and the Michaels, as they've become known, and the rest of the wonderful team. And the reason, of course, they approached me was because at the time I was covering Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, a man who overcame a stutter. And a man who on the campaign trail liked to talk about Ireland, his Irish roots, his love of Irish poetry. And he would also sometimes talk about the fact that he had a stutter and that he'd overcome the stutter. And it was the love of Irish poetry and the stutter, the two of those combined in a very, very special way, because Joe Biden's method as a young man of overcoming his stutter was to look in a mirror and recite the poetry of W.B. Yeats. And this was the way that he would improve his cadence, improve his speech pattern, and get over his stutter and gain his confidence. And very interestingly, I didn't realize this, but I was talking to Jamie a little bit earlier, and Jamie said also as a young man, he used to look in the mirror and to recognize the facial expressions. And one of these methods that he used to overcome his stutter. And it was fascinating to see Joe Biden on the campaign trail. And look, like all political leaders, he has his critics. Some would say he's doing a great job. Some would say he isn't doing a great job. He's very busy at the moment waiting for the midterm elections in 2 weeks' time. And typically the midterm elections, the president isn't on the ballot, but it's kind of a referendum on his presidency, and the Democrats are not expected to do well. They're expected to lose the control of the Congress, the House and the Senate. The question is, how bad will the loss be? So everybody's going to be really focused on that in the next few weeks. And there'll be a lot of focus on Joe Biden, and huge focus on him as he, we think, goes for his second term in office, but we don't definitively know if he's going to do that. But while people may disagree with him politically, everybody would agree that on the campaign trail he is an incredible, compassionate man. He's empathetic. He understands human suffering. He's been through a lot of personal tragedy himself, and he understands emotion, he understands pain, and he shows great empathy when he meets people on the campaign trail. And what has happened on numerous occasions is that he meets young people with stutters on the campaign trail, and they will talk to him about that, and he will talk to them about that, and he'll speak to them about how he overcame his stutter, how he overcame his own personal difficulties, and how he rose to the highest office in the land. And when I was covering Joe Biden's campaign, it really was a campaign like no other because it was in the middle of COVID. So you couldn't have the big campaign rallies, you couldn't have the big speeches, and of course in America they love the convention, and the convention is where you announce the nominee for the Republican Party and the nominee for the Democratic Party, and that's usually this big, huge event, tape falling from the ceiling, balloons, all of that. Again, none of that could happen. So instead, they had to do virtual campaigns, and it was all online, it was all televised. And the Democratic campaign involved a very interesting speech, and it was probably one of the highlights of that entire convention, a speech from a young man called Braden Harrington, a 13-year-old from New Hampshire, who began his speech, and we didn't actually know who this young man was or what he was going to say, and he said, I'm here today to talk about Joe Biden. We're members of the same club. And he spoke about how he had a stutter and he'd met Joe Biden and Joe Biden had helped him through. And I remember it was a real moment of unity at a very divided, divisive, difficult election, that this young man shone as this example of somebody who had been helped and somebody who, you know, was very much there to promote Joe Biden, but certainly I think both sides of the political divide appreciated what a powerful speaker he was and the powerful message that he was delivering on that campaign. And you know, I spoke earlier about Joe Biden and that love of Irish poetry and how that Irish poetry fed into his overcoming of his stutter. And I was fortunate enough to meet Joe Biden on a handful of occasions and to interview him during my time in the US. And the first occurred, he wasn't president yet. In fact, he hadn't even declared his candidacy. It was a few months before he announced that he was going to run. And he was at the residence of the Irish ambassador in Washington, and he was launching an Irish history book. And at the time, the big news at the time was Donald Trump and his border wall and his anti-immigrant rhetoric. And that was very much in the news at the time. And Joe Biden's speech that night referenced his own Irish roots, of which he is, of course, very proud and speaks of all the time, and spoke about the power and the importance of immigrants and what they have done for the US over the years. And he spoke about xenophobia and the importance of not excluding the other and of not creating an us versus them world. And he quoted W.B. Yeats that night, and he spoke about how Yeats spoke about a terrible beauty is born, and he said, and that's where we are right now in the US. And afterwards he was swamped by journalists and media because the talk at the time is that Joe Biden was going to declare his candidacy. He had not yet at that stage. So there was lots of US journalists there, lots of media, and of course his handlers were saying, he's not going to do any interviews, but one American journalist who was there laughed and went, yeah, right, because they said Joe Biden loves to talk. And he'll always stop and he'll always do people. So his handlers were trying to kind of rush him out of the building, but he stopped and he spoke to lots of people. And he was leaving, and I hadn't got my interview with him yet. I was there with my camera and I was there with my microphone, and my cameraman, Murray, was with me. And we said, how are we going to get his attention? I said, Irish poetry. I said, you said a terrible beauty is born. And he turned. And so I got a very quick interview with him on that night. And of course I said to him, I said, you know, if America's so terrible right now, are you the man that's going to lead it? Are you the man that's going to run for president? He was like, oh, we'll see. He didn't declare his candidacy for a few months until after that. Then the next time I met him, he was president-elect, so it was a few days after the election. He was still in Wilmington, Delaware, where his base was, and he hadn't yet moved to the White House. He hadn't yet moved to Washington, but he was holding all his meetings in his base in Wilmington, Delaware, and he left one evening, and it was a dark, rainy evening, November, kind of this time of the year, And the pool of journalists follow Joe Biden around, and they get access to him, and they very much trail all his movements. And he came out of this building, and they all went onto the bus. And my cameraman said, well, that's a really bad sign. That means he's not going to talk. So we stood there kind of in this dark evening, and I said, oh, you never know, he might talk. And all of a sudden, all the journalists came out of the bus and stood behind me. And they said, we know that that's Ireland, that's Irish TV, and we know that he loves Ireland. So if you were there, maybe he will come over and talk. So I feel like the pressure's on now. So the door opened and he walked out, and he was walking away from us. He was walking away from the journalists. He was going to the Beast, the limousine, the big SUV. And I said, question from Ireland, and he heard it, and he stopped, and he came over, and he gave a few minutes to talk about it. Was the story at the time was Brexit and how it was impacting on the Good Friday Agreement. And he spoke to us in that evening, and so the other journalists were relieved that he did come over and talk, because then of course they were able to ask him other questions about US issues. So they said, well, we know in future, shout Ireland, and he'll come over, and that will be your way to get your interview with Joe Biden. So that worked a couple of more times at the White House. When he was there, you would shout out Ireland, and he would come over. But he is a man who has a love of Ireland, he is a man who has a love of Irish poetry, and he is a man who has overcome so much in his own life. And we have spoken a lot today about that quote from Seamus Heaney about hope and history rhymes. And I was thinking about it afterwards. In a way, he used rhyme to achieve his own hopes and to make history. He used rhyme, he used the spoken word, he used literature, he used poetry to achieve so much in his life. And Jamie Googan and the rest of your team, I hope that the campaign you are launching today will also make hope and history rhyme, and that we're going to see this historic moment where Joe Biden will get involved. I think it would send a hugely powerful message to those 50,000 people who need to overcome those struggles and need to hear your stories of how you overcame. And by meeting with somebody, the most powerful leader in the land, and to hear his story, I think would really, really send a powerful message. So I am delighted that a year and a half on from we had our first Zoom call when I was in Washington, when you asked me to come on board and to help you guys. I couldn't really do a whole lot. I mean, all I could do was give you advice and tell you where to go. But this guy is so impressive. I said he'd be a great journalist. He has better contacts in the White House than I ever did know. He knows everybody. So I'll be coming to you for help in future if I need interviews and if I need access to the White House. I wish you the very, very best of luck with your campaign. I have no doubt you will get that meeting with Joe Biden, and I am as ever in awe of you and your determination and your hard work and your drive to achieve your goal, which I know will happen. Thank you all very, very much for having me here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I was going to say to Jamie, you need to recruit Brian so when President Biden comes off the plane, he's able to sidestep him and ask him for the invite. So thanks for that, Brian, and thanks for coming today. Finally, and by no means least, I'd like to invite Jamie Googan, co-founder of Stuttering Awareness and Mental Health Wellbeing Ireland, to address us. Thanks, Jamie.
As a person who has a verbal difference, we often have to ask ourselves, how are we feeling in the moment before we speak? And I know the importance of today, and I know the significance of the speech that I need to deliver today. And that makes me nervous, but I'm also excited at the same time. So, with that being said, Madam President, Brian O'Donovan, mentors, mayors, colleagues, friends, Jamie Googan is my name, and it is my honour to be addressing you here today on what I think is a really, really important occasion. Because today we launch Ireland's National Stuttering Awareness Day. For the right for a child to express themselves should and always should be viewed as a basic human right. But for those who are silenced, for those who cannot express themselves well, we will help them with that. When I was 3 years old, I fell and I hit my head. I knocked out my 4 front teeth. And I think it was from that impact that a trigger was released for stuttering. And you go through life, you go through school, not being able to say your name, where you're from, your phone number, hugely embarrassing. I often use my older brother's name, Ross. I got in big trouble for it, but I had to do it because I couldn't introduce myself. And that left a huge impact on me. And imagine not being able to say your own name. One of the most basic things someone should be able to do. But for some people, it's impossible. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Imagine not being able to say your name. How would that make you feel? When I went to second level, it was the first time that I felt a feeling of difference. We were in the assembly, and there was 97, 98 people in the assembly. And we went through the hall one by one, and I was the third last person. And we all had to say our names, our phone number, or our names, where we're from, our hobbies and interests. And it came to me, shut down. I started out of control, and the whole room laughed. And I think it was the first time that the whole kind of room laughed. And I left that room with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of embarrassment. And it's really hurtful, because you can't help that you have that problem, but when you have an entire room laugh at it, it's really, really hurtful. And you go on through second level and you get asked the questions. Now, of course you know the answers, but you just say that you don't know the answers so that you won't be exposed. It's like you don't want to be exposed to a person who has a verbal difference, especially not in front of your peers, not in front of your teachers. But no, we do know the answers. We just don't want to say it because we don't want to be exposed. And that's one of the tricks. That is a trained behaviour that we get ourselves into. That is one of the tricks for us to get ourselves out of actually speaking. When I went to third level education, it was a completely new environment. You don't know nobody. You have to say your name every day, lots and lots of times, and it's very, very difficult. And I remember my first presentation here, because it's supposed to last 20 minutes, it's supposed to last 15 minutes, it lasted 20 minutes, but couldn't get past the first slide. Couldn't say my name, couldn't introduce the topic. And I went home to my student accommodation that night and locked myself away for 3 days, and I had a really good talk to myself. A lot of bad thoughts inside the mind, and this is where mental well-being comes in, because it's really, really important to know that when you're by yourself and when you have those sort of thoughts, it's very, very scary that anyone can actually think of those thoughts. But on day 3, I picked up the phone and I asked for help. And it was the best thing I've ever done, is making that phone call, asking for help. It's something that's become very, very difficult, because you're putting your trust into somebody you don't know. And that takes a lot of courage to do, to put your trust that you've had for 21 years and put yourself into, and put your trust into someone else's hands. And I must admit, Michael O'Shea did a fantastic job when I had met him and I got to help. And I have to acknowledge my parents too, because as a young man, I had to watch my parents make phone calls every day trying to get me to help. And I have to acknowledge that. And that's very hard for us to watch that. Imagine asking your mom, would you call and book an appointment for me with the doctor or with the dentist because you can't say her name? That's very, very embarrassing. And it's hurtful for us, and we have to watch our parents do that and call THC, call speech therapists, trying to get help, the constant arguing. That makes a big impact on us ourselves, which lead us to October 2020. Yes, Joe Biden did a town hall with the CNN correspondent Anderson Cooper. He was asked a question where he gave 17 minutes answering the question of stutter, and I was amazed of the way he talked and so open about it. So we decided to start a campaign, Stuttering Where's Mental Wellbeing Ireland, to meet the President of the United States and hopefully bring him here to Cork. And as Mr. O'Donovan said, he loves to talk about Ireland, his Irish roots, his love of Ireland and his Irish poetry. And as a young man, he used to read the poetry of Yeats and a book of Emerson quotes, and he used to recite in the mirror the following: meek young men grow up in libraries, believe in the duties, with Bacon, with Cicero and Locke. Now, those are tongue twisters, and they're not easy to say, but that was his way to train himself to speak, and how to train his facial muscles, because he used to contort his face when he used to speak, and it was incredible. Dr. Keane O'Neill, you said September 15th last year, and I quote, if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. But if you want to go somewhere far, you bring people with you. Dr. Neil, right now, we have Brian O'Donovan sitting here inside this room. You know? Yeah. So we have the president of the university, the head of faculty here. We have co-founders. We have Breda Cody, the Irish Learning Support Association. We have Derry Canty, who, thank you for all your phone calls, Derry, who is the chairman of International Relations, Tourism and Strategic Planning, the deputy mayor of Cork, Damien Boylan, mayor of the county, Danny Collins, who I must thank you as well, Danny, because your brother Michael has been a huge support to us. And I always appreciate that support from yourself, Mike Collins, and that needs to be recognised. Unfortunately, he can't be here today, but that needs to be recognised too. We have Peter Hogan from the Careers of Advisory Department here at MTU, and it's incredible who you can gather here along the room, and to get everyone here inside that room together is certainly no mean feat, Dr. Neil, and so thank you for everything. Madam President, there is a line you use in your last speech. It's from the famous poet and writer Maya Angelou. Yeah. I know you're a big fan of the poet and writer. And she said, if one has courage, nothing can dim the light that shines from within. And passion that we have inside us to help others will not be extinguished because we know how it feels. And that's what gets us through to make sure the new generation coming up will never have to go through what we went through. And yesterday we were in the house of Oireachtas, and we're bringing up the issues that there's 4 to 6 year wait to get help. Councillor Canty, Councillor Boylan, Councillor Collins, I don't think anyone here today will argue that is not right. No, early intervention works. It's a scientific fact that early intervention works. And if we can get the kids help early on in life, it will save the government millions and millions. And more likely, when you get children help early, anything to do with their speech and language issues, it will not transfer into secondary level stuttering, which once it does, it's extremely hard to break. And also it will go into your mental health problems, your mental well-being, and we want to work with all of you, because the power of your voices will go far beyond these walls. And if we can bring the president here, that will send a very powerful message of hope. But your voices need to be heard too, to go far beyond these walls. And we will work with you on that. Not only will we work with you, we'll work with our educators, we'll work with people who care, there's Learning Support Association, our educators. And it's a circle of positivity of how we get this done, because goodness generates goodness. And if we all have our voices heard, then it's very easy to go back to the House of Oireachtas with an actual plan, but also to bring the World Stuttering Network here. On the board of directors inside the World Stuttering Network, there's the University of Tennessee, there's the University of California, and I will make that introduction with your office, and I'd be delighted to do that. Because the University of Tennessee has a speech language department which are world recognized, and the power of her voice, Professor Patricia Hedinger, is powerful. And if we can get her here and bring her to the House of Oireachtas, I have no doubt that things can change. And I want to make this point because there's 1,300 speech language therapists in Ireland. 250 speech and language therapists were redeployed for the last 2.5 years. That isn't right. Which just leaves over 1,000 speech therapists to deal with 50,000 individuals. Something has to give here, and that's the waiting list. And that needs to be addressed. We can all address that issue. And Madam President, I am going to Washington. I will be in Washington for St. Patrick's Day next year. We are bringing forward the board of the ambassadors for us to go to the White House to recite to the President the same poem that we recited here today. Because it is very important that that poem is given by the people who have a stutter themselves. That would mean a lot to him. And followed by the all-important meeting with the President himself. But only together we can make hope and history rhyme. Thank you very much to everyone coming here today, and appreciate it. And Mr. O'Donovan, I know you're a very proud Cork man.
Yes.
And on behalf of all of us here at MTU, this is a Cork jersey that has been signed by the entire football team.
Oh,
for
wow.
you.
Thank you so much.
So this is for you, Mr. Donovan.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That's lovely. Thanks.
Well done, Jamie. It's interesting, you know, like all of us here, you get a call, it's Jamie, and you know, it's not 5 minutes. It's not a 5-minute call, and it's what you know. And I love Jamie's energy and positivity. He always portrays that. But in the last couple of months, I ask him the same question. When you're running, what political party are you going to align yourself with? And, you know, and he hasn't answered that question. And I think, Jamie, it's something you should consider, because you know you would have the influence at political level to make a real difference. So I think it is something you should consider. Also, I'm always in awe of, I suppose, the amount of time you put into this organisation. It's not a paid job. You do it yourself in your own time, and you have a great way of bringing people in, and that's a skill in itself. And you know, as Maggie said, we are very proud of you, and I think we're all about, I suppose, producing graduates that can make a real difference in the world, and certainly you are making a difference. And if you can change the mindset of all of us, but more importantly, if you can make a difference to one kid that's struggling with stutter or mental challenges and make a difference, I think it's worth it. So well done, well done. The floor is open, so if anybody would like to say anything.
Sure. Thanks, I'll stay where I am. My voice is loud so you can hear me. I'm used to shouting over people. Look, good afternoon everybody, and again, I'm not going to go through the Deputy City Council with the Mayor of the County and President Maggie and the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It started off with a phone call from Jamie a number of years ago. One phone call. I'd like to go into City Hall to address the council. We did ask, and eventually he did get in. He got into the National Relations and Tourism, and he addressed us in City Hall. And since that was the first step that was taken to where he is today. He climbed over mountains, he climbed across rivers, he climbed across roads, he climbed over ditches to where we are today, because there was no saying to Jimmy, sorry, or to Jamie, sorry, we can't. You will do it. And as you say, I don't know whether or not I should have deleted his name a few times. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're eating your dinner, but I knew his time was 1:30. That was my call sign. But look, Jamie, I just have to stand here. I'm in awe with you of what you've done, because I know the other three lads that were here, which is, well, the other Michaels, and with what you went through yourselves. You brought it onto the table, and I sat in a few nights at the start with you when we did a few Zoom calls to family. I never knew exactly what the stuttering meant to some families, but you had got into them, and I just sat there with you listening to what was being said, and we were speaking to the kids. And then all of a sudden I get involved, and I say, get involved in sports, get out there, do something, don't sit at home looking at television, get out into the field of play, and you'll be grand, or read a few books. But Jamie seemed to have put his finger on the pulse to where we are. And of course Joe Biden became the block. Nothing else happened. Joe Biden was coming to Ireland, and he's coming to Cork. That was his goal, and you could see the letter here, it's there, Joe. And like that again, we looked at him in City Council, it was the same, because I know the Corporate Affairs inside did a lot of work with you. And Alma sends her regards today and best wishes to you, because she's like your private secretary. But everyone inside took Jamie under their elbows and everything like that. But today is something special, and like he spoke there a while ago, who would think that Jamie suffered from stuttering? You could not. The way he came across there, no hesitation, no nothing. He just flowed out from, and like as he said himself, initially when he started going to school, he had nothing. He couldn't even mention his name. And today, I think, Brian, you can put in a word from correspondent in America. Joe, the Jamie Show. The Jamie Show.
Is this not the Jamie Show, lads?
It is a Jamie Show. Well done, Lord. Definitely Lord here. But like that, as I said, Jamie says to me a few times, he says, you know what? Ask Doherty, can she put my name forward for something? I said, there's nothing good in City Hall for you, boy. You want to go further. What about the Dáil? No. What about to go to America as a senator or so, like that? That's the steps that Jamie is looking at and his goals. He's not going to stay around Cork for long. He has this fantastic well-being, stuttering and well-being. And when I listened to it at first from him, I said, we're going off our game here. Are we going down a cul-de-sac? But look what the cul-de-sac is after coming to today. Every day he woke up, he had something there. He was going something, he was doing something, he was here, he was there, he was there. And you can see yourself today, and I'll finish at this, that I was proud and honoured to be part of the team with Jamie. We'll forget the phone calls. It's all right, you were ringing me, I hadn't half the time only texting. But Jamie, congratulations, well done. And to your team, the other two lads, the other Michaels as well, initially when you started off here, in relation to this, you've now reached the pinnacle of what you want to do. And please God, in another few years' time, you'll only be going to Washington once, you'll be probably living there in time as our correspondents. And we'll look back at you and we'll say how proud we were to work with you. Thank you.
I wasn't going to say anything because it's all been said. And who wants to follow Brian O'Donovan anyway? All due respect. I was at that meeting, but next thing I see International Stuttering Awareness, and they want to invite Joe Biden to Cork. And you have to understand, it was a very fraught time. We were in the middle of COVID and everything. And I'm going, in the name of God, what is this about? So next thing, this gentleman comes on, and sure at the end of it then it's, all right, so fair enough. Okay, this guy's able to do it. If anybody's able to do it, this guy's able to do it. But I was thinking on the way out, I live in Blarney, I was thinking on the way over today, and it was actually after a chat I'd had with Norman. Norman and I are old soldiers, we go back a good bit. And we discussed Norman's travails, I suppose, your issues that you've dealt with. And I just thought a while ago, confidence is a con. It's an absolute con. Confidence comes from experience and it comes from trial and error. And that's the only way that you get through what you've got through, Jamie. Trial and error. Doing what you were doing to overcome your difficulties. Because I remember as a young man, I carried is the wrong word. I suffered from acne to the age of about 26 or 27. It's no big deal to the people around you, but it's a big deal to you. And it's obvious. And it affects your confidence. It's a huge thing. Much like having a stutter or having a stammer. It doesn't seem to go away. Eventually it does. Eventually you learn to control it. And life gets easier. And I remember the only way I could get through it at the time was with the support of my family and my friends who told me that, it really isn't that bad. They see that when they're looking at you. You don't see that when you're looking at me. What you do is hugely important, and somebody said it earlier. If you can help one kid live up to their potential, just one, this is a huge success. But I believe you're going to do far more than that. So look, you're pushing against an open door here. Whatever help we can give inside in City Hall, whatever help as members of a national party we can give to you nationally, just ask. And you've a good old ally here in Derry. Good man, well able to speak. Congratulations again, well done.
Well done. Jamie, I was delighted when you invited me here today. Basically, I know Mike has been working away with you last year or two, maybe. But I was inside, and I'll just tell you straight, I own a public house in Bantry. And people say to me, where are you going tomorrow? What event is on tomorrow? Then I'd say two events. I said, I chair a meeting in County Hall. I said, I'm going to launch Stuttering Awareness Day. I'm going to the event there. It's Brian O'Donovan. I says, So, you know, remember, man, that was on the news. I says, well, he's launching it.
A lot.
Oh, yeah. But someone speaks. There was a guy I heard on the radio, he says, and he spoke about stuttering. He says, he really came across very well. And then another one person spoke. Yeah, I heard him too. And like, he's really highlighted it. And they started a conversation between them. So people are listening to you. You know, just letting you know that. And that is no word of a lie, like. When I was listening to you speak there, I went to school in Scull. I'm originally from Scull and Goleen, Lowertown. And school bus used to collect us every morning. And we travel along route. It's a lovely kind of coastal route. And we'd stop at Collar Pier. We used to pick up kids coming from Long Island. It's an island just about a mile off the pier. And there was one guy, he was the same class as me. And in most mornings, the poor kids, like when they came off the boat, they were wet, because they used to row over themselves. And one of the guys, I don't want to mention his name, but I was always great friends with him, and still to this day, like, I wouldn't say best of buddies now, but I always wouldn't want them to sit beside him because they were wet, you know, from on the boat. Because, like, you know, Di, his first name was Di, D-A-I, his name was, and he had a severe stutter. And even up to this day, like, he has it, like, I met him there about a month ago in Scull, but like, he's worked with it, like, and he's just like, you know, but he still has it. But like, you know, I just thought when you spoke about your time you made your speech and you couldn't do it and you locked yourself into a room for 3 days, like, some people used to, you know, hit that guy, like, and mock him, like, you know, and like, I thought back, I said, geez, you know, in those days, you know, we never thought of mocking, you know. Back I went to school in the early 80s, mid-80s, it was the RTC when I came here. Right. So, like, you know, basically, look, fair play, you've opened their eyes, opened the people's eyes about stuttering, and I wish you best in the future, and I hope you do get to meet President Biden. And I will invite you to County Hall to give a speak as well, in one of our development meetings, and I will send a letter, if you like, from County Hall to President Biden, asking him to meet with you, like, you know, so we can meet together and we can organise this. Look, Brian, thank you for coming here for launching this. As I spoke to you earlier, my partner, during lockdown, like, we'll have to watch news, watch Brian, you know, like, listening to your flair, enthusiasm, you know, important issues that you were reporting for in the States, and especially the Trump administration. Everyone just, the way you did it, like, everyone likes it, it's like, you know, and it's great to have you back home.
Thank you very much.
It's great, you know, you're half of West Cork.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me there, folks. I wonder if you would mind if I could say a few words. Norman Coleman is my name. I feel like a bit of a fraud, being honest with you, because Jamie, the two Michaels and Con do way more than I have ever done in relation to the stuttering awareness. I like my story, and I have met some of you previously, but I had an awful stutter, I suppose, up to the age of 40, and the mental well-being is such an important part of the title, in that I suffered mentally. I suffered hugely, and there was a perception out there. I always felt that the stutter was the person in the pub. He'd have a few points, you wouldn't think anything wrong with him, he'd be chatting away mad and there'd be no problem. And if he or she sang a song, sure, there'd be no problem, sure, they're great crack and everything, they're fine. And I was that person, but the following day I couldn't put two words together. I couldn't go down to a shop, I couldn't ask for anything. As Jamie, exactly as he described, I would have had, asked my parents to make phone calls. Like the phone. It was a Graham Alexander Bell invented the thing. I hated him with a passion because he invented the phone. Because the phone was the horror. Like, you just couldn't do it. And the intercoms, and you'd ask for somebody, and then the person who was answering was thinking that you were playing a joke, you were messing, and they tell you to go away in no uncertain terms and don't waste my time. And what that did to me was like, it's indescribable, really. And it was only, as Jamie said, that we look for help. And it's only when you look for help, and there's just one story of it, and I'll be really brief. I'm gonna steal this from the West Wing. There's a guy walking down the street and he falls into a hole. You may have heard this. And he's 10 foot down, and he can't get down, and he sees a doctor going past, and he's, Doc, you've got to help me here. I'm stuck down the hole, and the doctor writes out a prescription and hands it down to him. And the priest walks by and he said, Father, you've got to help me. I'm stuck down the hole and I can't get out. And the father says a few prayers for him and goes on, and he's sick down the hole. So he sees a buddy of his, and he said, Joe, I'm stuck here. Could you help me out? And Joe hops down into the hole. And the guy says, what are you doing? No, there's two of us there. And his buddy says, yeah, but I've been down here before, and I know how to get out. And I think that's what all of us who've had this awful infliction, and this sums up Jamie really, and the two Michaels, and Connor's fantastic help. That we've, like, I suppose particularly, sorry, Connor introducing, but it was Jamie and the two Michaels, and I suppose I play a small part. That we've been down the hole, and we can kind of help people to get out of it. So well done, Jamie, and thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody. We're all busy. Everybody is so busy. And I sometimes tell, just to finish up, I sometimes tell people, when I'm talking to particularly teenagers now who have stuttered, saying, look, how do I watch the newsreaders? Like, we think when we're speaking the way we're supposed to speak, we're talking very slowly. But listen to the newsreader. That's the pace. They're actually not talking. They're actually talking normally. And if anybody wanted an example, Brian O'Donovan. You're a stammerer's dream voice, and I mean that. So, and I still aspire to that. I still try to improve my speech, and I work on it every single day. But so thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Now, there was a reason behind that date. January 21st. January 21st was Joe Biden's first day in office, so it was 1 year anniversary where he had his first day in office. That is why January 21st we signed the invitation. So there's always a reason behind a date, as Derry Canty would have said, that you go for this date. And there is always a reason behind a date that we pick.
So our next challenge really is, we know Jamie's going to the States. The next job now, collectively, we have to get him into the White House.
Get him elected. Exactly.
But I know Jamie and there's usually a delegation of the City Council go to St. Patrick's.
Usually the week before.
Yeah.
Well, they go to the dinner as well, don't they? So it might be worth inquiring if we could try and... Okay, good. Thanks.
And, I would just like to thank Brian Donovan too. He came all the way down from Dublin today, and he's going back up tonight. It's an awful long journey. Thank you personally for all of your help over last year. I very much appreciate it. And as I always say, and always, as I said to everyone here today, that I personally think you're one of Ireland's best public speakers. And I say it to everyone I meet, and I even said it to a few guys here today, but the way you present and the way that you talk and how you present everything, and it's no certainty if I can train myself to become 10% as good as that, Brian, I'll be very, very happy.
To say thank you very much.